Hi everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. I hope you're well today. Today we're going to be answering a question from a viewer who asked the question, do INFJs tend to be conservative? So before I answer this question, just a reminder that I have written a book on the INFJ type, The Ecstatic Soul. It's available at the links down below in the description box if you want to deepen your knowledge of the INFJ personality. You think that you've already covered the function stack, you've read the articles online, and so you feel like you have pretty good knowledge, but you want to go further, get a sense of what the INFJ consciousness is like and its various intricacies and how to lead an INFJ life and to be fulfilled in your life. This is the book to get, less than $10. Like I said, all the links below in the description box to all the Amazon websites, less than $10, ebook, paperback format. If you have any questions, you shoot and I will get back to you. So, on the surface, this question appears like a very simple question and one that may not admit of an easy answer. But reflecting on it further, I realized that there might be room for reflecting and getting to some interesting clarifications and conclusions. So to the question, are INFJs conservative or do INFJs tend to be conservative? I'm assuming that this means politically, but we can take the question to apply beyond politics. Is INFJ thought conservative thought? Does it lean toward conservatism? That kind of thing. So the first thing to be conscious of is to be careful not to essentialize things and phenomena, not to fall for essentialism, as we call it in philosophy. So essentially, to essentialize something is to consider that it has an intrinsic nature which dictates its boundaries and its possibilities. Now, you might make the arguments that certain things have an intrinsic nature. For example, someone might try to make the claim that consciousness is intrinsically embodied, or that human beings intrinsically have rights. Rights are intrinsic to human nature. That's a very useful conception if you're a defender of human rights. But I don't know exactly how useful essentialism is because I'm not a big fan of it myself. But what's for sure is that it has a limited application, and once you apply to something as malleable and fluid as INFJ consciousness or the INFJ personality, it becomes, its limitations become quite obvious. So there's no intrinsic INFJ conscious nature that makes it lean toward conservatism or liberalism, if you like. I think that much should be clear and pretty standard common sense. However, what's true, I think, and it is pretty much circumscribed and dictated by the type of function stack that the INFJ has, particularly NI dominance and relatively weak sensory cognitive functions, is that INFJs are non-dogmatic. You can say that about INFJs on the basis of the function stack. You cannot say whether they are conservative or liberal-minded, or more likely to be conservative or liberal, because this will depend on other factors that are not captured by the scheme INFJ personality. But you can certainly say that, on average, a healthy INFJ, healthy use of NI, well balanced by the other functions, predicated upon openness to possibility, good social interaction skills, ability to parse arguments and consider pros and cons via TI. I mean, that all tends to correlate with non-dogmatism, if you like, which is equivalent to demonstrating a healthy level of skepticism toward all explanations. Unhealthy INFJs could well be dogmatic. Perhaps if they repress FE, if their TI is all over the place, and they are a little bit lost in NI. But I think you can reasonably make the case then that healthy INFJs are not dogmatic. It's much less likely to be the case of an SI dominant, for example, or TSI user, such as an ESTJ. Much more likely to be dogmatic. And in fact, if you look at the history of thought, more dogmatic religious figures have tended to be SI users. Now, what's interesting is that sometimes INFJs can be so little dogmatic that it can work against them. Instead of being skeptical toward, like showing a reasonable degree of skepticism toward all possible theories, they will tend to find all possible theories interesting. And that can be an issue because you could argue that if not dogmatism, a certain level of critical distance and delineation of what's worth pursuing and what's not pursuing is necessary to improving your knowledge. You need to follow a certain path to the exclusion of others. If you find all paths interesting and worthy of being explored, you're likely not to be able to consolidate your knowledge of any single one path. And that's a problem, and it's a problem that I've encountered in some INFJs. They think everything is interesting, from astrology to quantum physics. Well, at some point you have to make a choice. So the pure openness of the healthy INFJ can be an impediment to consolidating knowledge and knowledge positions, opinions, and weapons for, or arguments for debates. That's the real issue. And it's an issue that some of the types, for example, sometimes INTJs and INTPs I've seen online, use that against INFJs, but they claim that's because the INFJs haven't thought things through. This is partly the case, but it fails to pinpoint the real cause, which is, again, this extreme openness that INFJs tend to display, which can end up working against them. Now, we're very far from a conservative mindset, but that leads us to the redefinition of what conservative means. You can be politically conservative or you can be politically liberal, but you can also think of conservativeness as conservativeness in your thinking, as in you tend to stick to what you think works in your thinking, and you only embrace new ideas and new systems and new thoughts if they can be positively shown to add something useful to what you already are working with. Like, from this perspective, like I said, INFJs are extremely non-conservative to the point that it can sometimes work against them, because a degree of thought conservatism can be argued to be useful. When it comes to political conservativeness, you see that does not translate directly, because political conservativeness is really a label, if you like, that we place on a certain set of beliefs about society, about how society should be organized, so on. And similarly for political liberalism, political socialism, and so on. Now you have a certain set of beliefs, right? And that makes you a conservative, that makes you, politically, makes you a liberal, or makes you a socialist, or anything else, an anarchist. Now, within that set of beliefs, there can be a lot of evolution. You might remain circumscribed, whether, more or less fluidly, within beliefs that would qualify as politically conservative or politically liberal. But there can still be a lot of dynamic evolution throughout time and openness to debate for any particular set. In other words, someone who's politically conservative can be non-dogmatic and can be demonstrative of thought liberalism in some way, or non-conservatism. Exactly in the same sense, someone who identifies as politically liberal can be extremely dogmatic and demonstrate thought conservatism, resistance to change. And in other ways, and I know that sounds a bit contradictory, you could be conservatively liberal or dogmatically liberal and undogmatically conservative. And if you look, for example, a very good example is the history of the English and Scottish Enlightenment. In the 18th century, you have lots of figures like David Hume and Edmund Burke are probably the best examples, where really what they were putting forward could be described, at least retrospectively, as quite politically conservative. But they were both the NTPs, and they were both extremely non-dogmatic in their thought process. So that was just to illustrate, and you can apply that to INFJs as well. INFJs are most likely to be thought non-conservative and non-dogmatic, but they could very well be politically conservative. There's no incompatibility between the two. All right, let me know what you think in the comments, guys. Give a like and consider subscribing. Bye-bye.